it's linked with, it's linked with stuff like early miscarriage and all sorts of hormonal stuff as well as mood stuff. So anxiety, depression, stress. So that's something that might be worth getting your doctor to check you out with. Because if you do have it, then keeping on an activated B can just make a massive difference for all sorts of things. Because what can happen if you just take, say, folate, you know, you actually convert it. If you've got the THFR gene, you just can't convert it. So therefore it creates inflammation in the body. So I don't know whether you heard, there was a paper a few years ago where, you know, because obviously doctors have been recommending folate forever, and then they started activating, you know, recommending folic acid, and but there's an even better version, you know, the activated form. So
we learned about in nutrition that pregnant moms were having a lack of folic acids. So they started all the milk. Is it milk or bread? I forget which one.
Oh, they add it to all sorts of things. Yeah.
And all of America's all the milks and breads are and to make sure
enriched.
That pregnant women don't have a lack of it.
Well, funnily enough, if the government doesn't regulate the good form, they can be adding an inactive form that if we don't have the ability to convert it, it doesn't do any better than taking it. Yeah. So yeah, there's really good forms of nutrition, and then there's general forms. And really, the stuff about the activated Bs has only been around for like these versions, maybe 2-3 years. Like, it's fairly new in the nutrition field. And, you know, my brother's been a GP for 33 years, and he's never checked anyone for MTHFR. And occasionally he'll be chatting to me about a client, and I'll say, oh, they'll have the MTHFR gene, you should check for that. So, which of course he never does, but that's okay.
Yeah, the thing about nutrition that they emphasize in the classes, like any class that talks about nutrition, or my nutrition class,
yes,
they talk about how nutrition, like the whole field, it was so different 10 years ago, so different 10 years before that. They said it changes constantly. Like diets they recommend then become like, they realize that's really bad for your body because they just are constantly changing.
Okay, so what about any organs that are messing with insomnia? Okay, let me just check that little medication. And hold. Oh, that's the Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin. No, that one. Wellbutrin. So how long have you been on that one?
That's when I've been on the least amount of time, like 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe your immune system's still just getting used to it, because the energy mismatch showed up with that one, which means your immune system doesn't know what to do with the residue of it, which means the residue can build up in the body in the lymphatics or the fat tissue or the liver pathways or... Oops.
My pharmacy friends scared me about the spirulactone because, like, you know, I'm taking it to my body, but because they're all pharmacy, they worked in pharmacies, and they said spirulactone, you have to wear a mask and gloves to handle because it's considered a hazardous material. And I'm like, and I'm taking it.
That's amazing, isn't it? Well, that's it, you know, it's sort of once... It's, yeah. From the natural therapies perspective, there's always drug residue and what's happening in the body with it. So, you know, some drugs have got half-lives of, you know, X amount of time and all sorts of things. But when they've checked for those, that's in the bloodstream. So the bloodstream will try to keep everything as clean as possible for as long as possible, which is why we can have to increase doses. It's even like me and you with your melatonin, you know. So as we up our doses of melatonin, your body's just making more and more receptors on the cells, and then you need more and more to get it to work. And me see if there's any organs that are being messed by or that we need to, no, what I'm trying to do is get your body to use the medication as well as possible. That's my aim, because it's doing you good. So the Wellbutrin, recheck this and hold. Organs. Okay, so there's 4 different liver pathways. Hold, I'm going backwards, okay? Hold, that one's fine. Hold up, I'm going down. Okay, hold, that one's fine. Okay, hold, I'm going back, that one's good. And hold up, I'm going down, yeah, right, okay. Just a tiny little bit on the 4th one there. I'm going to mute that phone. Okay, so tiny little, so that one is the liver particularly dealing with stress hormones. So in that, and it wasn't bad, it's just a little, you know, it's just a little bit of an unlock compared to the other one.
When you did the Wellbutrin, the original one, like my arm just like...
Yeah, yeah. So now we're just checking the organ. Yeah, exactly. So when that one shows up, to me it often, once again, can check with your blood work. When fibrin shows up high, so you've seen fibrin in blood. So fibrin is that sticky stuff, looks like, you know,
what closes clots.
Spider web. Exactly. So when we think we're under attack, it creates a thickness in the blood so that when we get attacked, we don't bleed out and die.
Yes.
Maybe it's being in Australia, you're worried about all the sharks.
That was the system I felt like I remembered the best, was the circulatory system.
Nice. And you've been acing everything?
Oh, well that's impossible with our teacher. He is, like, he tries to make the average, well, the grading system is very different from Australia.
Yeah.
I would say, like, so I have, like, a 3.7 GPA, which is, like, an A minus.
Yes.
And he tries to make his averages around, like, a C. So that's,
yeah,
like...
right. Why?
Because he wants us all to struggle.
Huh. So interesting, isn't it? And hold. Okay. This one's Lexapro. Okay, so unlike the Wellbutrin, your body knows what it's doing with this one, it's just a little bit overloaded at the moment. Are there any organs? Liver again. Okay.
My dad actually, he had his, like, liver enzymes checked because he went to a doctor that likes to check everyone's when they first come, and his were, like, weren't doing great because he takes, as I told you, he has so many, like, issues, and he would take, like, Advil, like 4 Advil. We'd always tell him not to. We'd take 4 Advil every morning, 4 Advil every evening. It's
wow.
Like, it was just messing up his liver.
Because he was in pain, or?
Yeah, because he just has constant back pain.
Yeah, okay. Hold, I'm going back. Hold up, I'm going down. Okay, so a little waffly in phase 1, not bad. And hold. And hold. Yeah, right. Okay. So much worse in that second pathway over there. So this is the neurolymphatic point for the liver, which you can do any time your liver's feeling a bit dodgy. It's underneath the left side, stomach's under the right side. They tend to work together anyway. And your liver enzymes are checked medically?
They haven't been, but I don't think they don't have any reason to worry because I'm not taking affiliate Advil. I don't drink.
Yeah.
So I think they were just more worried about him because of all the
Yeah.
taking.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's he tried for his back? All sorts of things?
He was chronic. He was overweight.
Yeah.
And then he had a turning point, which was, remember I told you that terrible Christmas where I had my cyst rupture? He also had a terrible Christmas because he had a disc.
A ruptured disc?
Yeah, and he was in such pain. He had sciatica, so sciatic
At the
nerve,
same time?
yeah,
Oh my
being,
goodness.
pressed. And he was in such pain, he was throwing up. And then whenever he had to have like minor surgery and have it fixed, it was like a turning point for him where he was, because they were like, this is just caused because you're overweight. Yeah. And he went keto, and he still is keto.
And he does well on keto?
And he's lost 100 pounds.
Wow, fabulous.
Yeah.
Wow. And his energy and everything's improving?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if I could ever go keto because I already, like, am having problems sleeping. I have very low energy, and, like, to just be using, like, the proteins and fats as energy and not carbs.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. He asked me to join him, but I'm like, I don't know. Also, I'm not a huge meat eater. And he is, so like it was easy for him just like, I'll just eat a bunch of steak.
Do you know what blood group you are?
I'm O positive.
Yeah, right. So you should be the carnivore. So O blood groups should be the carnivores. A's are great vegetarians. B's can just about eat anything.
It's funny, my dad's an A, but just
yeah,
a
right.
meat eater.
But he's doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. Funnily enough, the Lexapro's messing with your blood sugar.
Oh.
So it could be part of the cravings. So liver and pancreas. Okay. The third priority is the one you haven't been on forever. Actually, let me check the, what was it called, Vocalin? Let me check the Vocalin. Oh, because is that when the migraines started?
Yes.
Or, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so there's, no, still residue in there big time. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was taking it every day for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And the highest dose plus a booster,
Wow.
it's like 35 milligrams a day.
So energy mismatch to it, so your body just does not know what to do with the residue. Yeah, right. Got classic little ADHD toes. Little you've got the, you know, they're sort of like bending, you know, which is about clawing into the earth, which is about, you know, standing your ground and speaking your truth, and
I've always had that.
Having that strength. Yeah, it's sort of like, so I think I was 21 when I did Bowen technique, and she said, okay, who here's got, because there's a name for them. Anyway, she said, who's got these sort of toes? And we went, no. And I said, I'll get up and be a guinea pig. So I hopped up and she said, you've got them. So I'm a bit of an ADHD girl as well. Just a bit. Undiagnosed.
It's like there like a lot of people are like undiagnosed, but then there's a lot of people, especially in America, and this is why like people that actually have the condition and know it because they did lots of testing.
Yeah.
Are like getting refused by some doctors to like prescribe them their medication because people just go there like, I have ADHD, give me Adderall, and and it makes like people like me who actually have it, but like are really like need our medication but are okay without it, but need it, like it makes us look worse.
Yeah. in Australia, have you ever had your heavy metals checked? Could be something to think about down the track as well, because they can come through the womb, they can come through when you're in the womb. But certainly the two areas in Australia that have got the highest levels of ADHD are Mount Isa and Wagga Wagga, and they're two mining communities. Oh. So in Mount Isa it's mainly lead, and in Wagga Wagga it's a different one, but they still both have the two highest levels. And in Gladstone, where there's a huge mining thing, it's other stuff that goes on. Aluminium, I think, is massive so there's heaps of brain, sort of stuff.
I could imagine maybe some sort of lead or something, just because I lived in DC, and
yes.
That's like one of the oldest places in the U.S.
Yeah.
Because it was the capital, and they have all these old buildings that have lead paint.
Ah, yes.
And I lived in a building that was over 100 years old, but that's not that old for Britain, but it's old for the U.S.
Yeah.
Old for Australia.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so the heavy metals can build, and brain, you can imagine the brain is it's mostly fat, and fat is a really good insulator. So when we are babies, if we've got and I'm thinking more autism, one of the studies that shows, they haven't done a lot of studies on babies, and that trajectory from babies to ADHD, but they certainly have with babies to autism. So what they found was that there has to be the perfect combination of things, not perfect, for the mother's probiotics, the baby's probiotics, liver pathways not working, that MTHFR gene. And if all of that happens, then when we get, and once again, this is not anti-vaccine, but when we get vaccinated, those aluminiums and mercuries can cross the blood-brain barrier much more easily with all of that stuff going on. So it's
perfect combination.
Exactly. So if we've got plenty of the good probiotics in there, that releases 60% more heavy metals on a daily basis. So, having our liver working properly, so drinking enough water, purified water,
I don't drink enough water.
Aha. So that one was the concerta. So it's sort of throwing, so there's still residue. Body doesn't know what to do with the residue. Okay. So, I'm sort of thinking receptors, as part of the solution for you. Because the drugs do so well that we don't want to mess with them, but we want to be able to clean it up so that they can just start doing their job again without stopping you from sleeping. Yeah, so this little area through here, that's all amygdala stuff. And the main one that's been showing up, which is sort of interesting, is the third one, which is old pain and punishment circuits. But the fourth one, escape, submission, freeze. I think the others haven't really shown up at all. But they're not showing up at the moment, they're all locking, which is cool. So I check them in relation to organs and everything, organs and medications and all sorts of stuff. Just because, just about anything that go wrong with us, our brain goes, holy moly, not me. Why? Why? Yeah, Christmas rupture, why? Okay, so let's recheck this little list. Yeah, the spironolactone just isn't showing up, so your body's coping with that really well at the moment. It hasn't been that long, has it?
No, 3 months.
Yeah.
But at least we know it's doing its job from the
Yeah,
work.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get back and recheck your adrenals and hold. Survival, hold. Deep survival, beautiful. Hidden, excellent. Okay, so that's clear. Since you flew over the Great Blue, we'll check your celestial circuit now. Okay, so this is beginning and end points of the central and governing meridians, which connect conscious, unconscious pathways. Yeah, that's fine. Perfect. More conscious pathways. Oh, hello. So, trust and trust issues. Did the ADHD mess with your trust in yourself to remember stuff? Like, did you have that issue where even if you studied and tried, you couldn't get the result you were after?
I learned through college, they always say, like, don't double guess yourself, but I would, like, have so many tests where I would mark an answer, erase it, and mark another answer, have it wrong, and then the right answer was the one that I double guessed myself.
Yeah. So, let's go. Trust and trust issues, which is nearly always about self. So this is a connection from left to right sides of the brain. Hold out for me. No. Hold. Nothing. And it makes life harder when you don't trust yourself.
Yeah.
That, not trusting yourself, is switching off your pleasure reward centres, which then dampens your ability to create your serotonin and dopamine, which makes it hard, which is why it's great you're studying something you love, because that will automatically bypass that and get the feel-good hormones going. But I can imagine if you were studying something you weren't enjoying so much, it would be really hard to get motivated.
Oh, trust me, like, taking the class that I'm taking here, it's my first history class, like, since 10th grade, and I do not like history, and, like, we've only had one paper so far, and I did it, like hours before the deadline, and, like, I know we have more papers coming up. The first day I did the readings, and then after that it was so hard to get myself to do the readings, so it was just, like, so much reading about things
no interest.
Don't need for life.
So is it history within the science medical field, or?
No, it's just Australian
just general
history, yeah.
Oh, right.
It was the only thing they were offering.
Yeah, okay. So let's go back and recheck trust and trust issues. And again, hold out. Beautiful. The next one showing up is lack of motivation due to your internal monkey brain. So the internal negative patterning that, it's like, I don't want to know. Yeah, well, I could imagine learning Australian history. That would be weird. So let's check motivation. So this is the memory centre, the hippocampus. But like you've said, you've got a good brain. The memory's not a problem. It's more the distractions that make it challenging. Hold out for me. Yeah. So that's lack of motivation due to that internal, well, I call it my monkey brain. You might have a squirrel brain. Same again though, switching off your pleasure reward centres, which makes sense. So, because the core memory centres didn't show up at all, which is pretty cool. Okay, so, motivation. And again, hold. Excellent. Okay, good. So where else do I need to go? Parahippocampus. Oh, why not? Okay. So parahippocampus is the gyrus around the hippocampus. So it's more the emotional connection to the memory centre.
Oh, I remember exactly what it looks like.
Nice.
It's funny, I don't think we ever had to, like, learn the actual brain, but we had to learn the bones of the skull. I remember that test very clearly.
Well, that bit I did on your base and 8th chakra before, that was a course called cranial kinesiology. And the guy who developed it, Guy Bennett, he was working with a medium who found the connections between the chakras, the bones of the skull, and the organs of the body. So, and honestly, I've been using that like for 20 years, and it's just such a nice, neat little process that works.
That's something I've always been, like, interested in, is, like, psychic readers and stuff. I always wanted since I was a kid, because I've always been so interested in it. And, like, the weirdest experience I've had was the first one I went to, like, I was really young. My parents were like, let's just like try it. So I was like 8 years old. It was all of us. And she like looks at me and she's like, okay, so you need to go outside and walk barefoot on the grass every single day because you're gonna like lose vision in your right eye. And I was kind of like, okay, sure, and like didn't do it. And now my right eye, like I can barely see out of it. It's
and
like,
you don't get outside.
I don't go outside. It's like I have such bad vision in my right eye.
Wow. Fascinating.
It's just the right one. The left one is fine.
Interesting.
And that was like the craziest experience. I was like, whoa, like how did you know?
Well, Sanu, she did a reading for someone recently, and she gets people to bring in a photo of a loved one. That's sort of it's her preferred medium readings that she likes to do. And as soon as she started, and she doesn't see the photos, they're just upside down on the table. And so as soon as she had this mother and daughter sitting there, the mother said, Sanu said, oh, I'm so sorry. She said, I've got a visual of my father that I just can't get out of my head. And she just kept trying to get back into the reading and it wouldn't disappear. So she finally said to them, look, I've just got to tell you what's in this picture because it's driving me nuts. It won't leave, and maybe if I tell you what it is, it'll just disappear. So it was her dad sitting in one of those canvas chairs out the back, and he's having a drink and watching the sunset and, just having his moment at the end of the day. Anyway, the mum and daughter sort of looked at each other and didn't say anything, and then Sanu was able to get it out of her head and she kept on going. So by the end, they said, and the reading ended up going quite smoothly, but by the end, Sanu said, the lady said to her, so do you want to see the photo? And she said, oh, yes, please. And she showed her, it was a very similar picture of her woman's father. Same chair, sitting out the back of a house, so Sanu just went, oh, goosebumps. There's weird stuff out there that science can't explain. And I've worked with several mediums over the years, so I'm not a medium. I don't intuit any of that sort of stuff at all.
And even science, like, that explains things can't explain what they're explaining. Like, the Big Bang, which is like, it was just nothing, and then it happened. And we know it happened, but we don't know how it happened.
Yeah, how, exactly. I sort of like the fact that there's stuff we don't know how it happens. Suits me quite fine. So parahippocampus is showing up. The main one in there was visceral response, and maybe once again in school when you were having trouble with, say, exams and stuff like that because of the brain, that visceral response. So as soon as you get that gut emotion going on, the whole vagus nerve thing takes energy away from the brain in a heartbeat. So then we're our own worst enemies because we start stressing and then we can't remember what we know.
I understand that so much. Like, on my most recent tests, the one I said I think I knew the most information on, I did worse on that test than the one where I barely studied. Because, like, I feel like the one I barely the one I studied but, like, was like, I'm going to do terribly, I just, like, put my first response. And I got such a good grade on that test, and I was like, what? I felt like I didn't know it at all. And I think it's just, like, trusting my gut and just being like, that one, it made a better result than me, like, overthinking, like, what is fibrin?
Absolutely. Exactly. Big spider web.